Hey, so in today's demo, I'll go through how to paint this. So why join? Why am I doing this? It's a new technique. Of course, I'm always going to leave the link in the description below, but it's using a misting bottle. So let's get to it. All right, to start this, we're going to do the centers first. And we're going to come in with a strong violet color. And then mix in some yellow. Now instead of trying to get the texture into the actual seeds, I'm going to add salt in. Right, I'm going to move on. Good, I'm going to let those dry. Okay, so now everything's dry and I've got some pretty strong reddish violet mixed up here, and I'm going to start defining some of these edges with a light glaze. So So I'm putting down the paint and then using a mister to get it to go in directions I want it to go in. So I want it to be light. I want it to define an edge here, but not run too crazy. So I mixed up some green here, And now we're going to go in and do the same definition and creating washes with a green. Okay, everything's dry again. Next step is to do a couple of washes with yellow. I took a Hansa yellow and some yellow ochre and mix them together. So I'm going to just go around the center of the flowers and then wash it out. And now while that's still wet, I'm going to start doing more in the shape of the actual petals. Okay, now that we have that laid in, we're dry again, right? I'm going to start pulling the same color green as we had before, potentially in different, not quite that wet. I want it to be relatively dry so I can really start to pull in some of these edges. And define some of what was lost with all of that, all those washes. Right, when it gets a little too hard, you can use a water bottle. I'm going to use some water and just get it, bring it back and soften it with water. Alright, so now we're going to come back with a richer gold or color, right? And define more the petals, but also let them bleed into each other or not have clear definition of edges, like where there's petals in between, where they're running into each other, right? Just enjoy doing it and create variations. So add a little bit more yellow into some of it, add a little more sienna, like go back and forth. Okay, so here we go. Great, so now we're back, everything's dry. We're going to start using the same color, but really pick up on the intensity. And start laying over the initial shape. And essentially picking up on shapes, following. That help. Almost define the edges. Right, so I'm going along the petal's edge, but I'm also lining up these linear elements. Alright, so I've made some green of a strong, similar hue, right? Maybe a little too in the green. Oh, that's good. And now I'm basically playing the same game, right? So continuing on with some of this, trying to pick up some of these ideas of vertical pieces. Just by identifying some edges, right? That's just too wet. So I'll play over here. Okay, so now just a little strengthening of some of the petals. So now playing with the dark value in the purples, right? Just very small touches to bring out some areas and some contrast. Like find the little V's. So I put together an even darker green wash to be able to really start to pull some of these edges and ideas out. So now to move some of this stationariness around, I guess is the right way to put it. And just take a brush. It's a 3/4, half-inch stiff brush, kind of cheap thing, synthetic. It's wet, but not soaking wet. I'm just pushing. See if I can pick up some of the pigment and move it around a little bit. So I have a rigger brush, and this is about the same, picking up on some of those movements that I've already created and just reinforcing them, right? And keep the lines moving, but break them up, right? So you're letting the brush kind of push some of the movements that you've been doing along, but it stops. To suggest it goes behind things, right? It's adding depth to the composition. So, according to the tutorial I was going along, we're pretty much done, but for E, I feel like the petals and the flowers need a little something now because everything else is kind of competing with it. I'm not quite sure what it is, and you and I might find it together, or I might destroy everything together. We'll figure that out. All right, so how'd that go? Okay, I'm just gonna hold this for reference. So I thought that was okay. It was a great lesson. I learned a lot of things. I learned a new technique, kind of, or I learned how not to do it at some level. So I'm not going to go over too much. Obviously, go look at the other lesson as well. You can compare the two. Mine is not as nice as the original lesson or the professional painter. I don't think it should be at this point. But I did learn a lot of things, and it was interesting to see about washes and doing these washes and playing with letting negative space actually create some options or some suggest pieces like stocks for us, right? Instead of actually having to paint it. I thought that was a really great lesson. What I did wrong. So I grabbed just a misting bottle that I found. This is not a misting bottle for watercolor paint. I'm getting one, a new one. So it's another thing I'm going to buy. And I'll do this again. I thought it was really worth it. In fact, the YouTube channel that this is on has some exercises like warm-ups to get you prepared to do this. And I think that'll be in the future something I'll do because I want to give that a go. Anyways, it was really worthwhile. It was pretty exciting and a really new technique, and I like the end results. So I hope you do too. Thanks for coming along for the ride. We'll see you guys soon.